Conscience Scene 4. The drive to Lisa's was mercifully short, but Timothy held onto the padded safety bar with a death grip. Not that Janet was speeding, in fact, she was driving much slower than normal. Timothy decided that this must be another manifestation of her newfound maternal instinct. He dreaded this visit with Lisa. He had been trying for the past 3 years to get into her pants with no luck. If she saw him like this, he would never have another chance at her. She would laugh in his face. All the special favors, the compliments, all his preparation would be wasted. That's if she believed Janet. A very big if. The worst part would be when Janet told her who her baby really was. Lisa's big blue eyes would open wide. She'd stare at him, ask Janet if was really true and frown and say how sorry she was and ask what had happened. Lisa was a photojournalist, she would get the story out of Janet. Then she'd wait until they had left and call the police. Lisa was simply not going to believe that Janet was a witch and had turned a grown man, her husband, into a baby. It wasn't reasonable. She'd call the police, who would investigate, find him and assume that Janet had lost her mind and kidnapped someone's baby. He'd become a ward of the court when they couldn't find his mother, and Janet would spend the rest of her life in an institution for the criminally insane. He would lose whatever chance he had to be returned to normal. On the other hand, if she did believe Janet, then no matter what he did in the future, she would remember him as a baby. His dashing masculine image, built up so meticulously in Lisa's eyes, would be hopelessly overpowered by the mental picture of a drooling, crawling infant. He was utterly miserable. He wallowed in self-pity and trembled at the thought of the impending ordeal. Lisa's house was in the hill country not far from Janet's and Timothy's house. She greeted them at the door and invited them in, saying, "Oh hi, Janet, come in." Lisa looked closely at Timothy's t-shirt, chuckled at the message on the front and said, "What a cute baby shirt. Who's your little friend, Janet? I don't think I've met him before." Janet laughed merrily and said, "Oh, but you have. He's been over here lots of times. You don't recognize him?" Lisa tilted her head sideways and regarded Timothy thoughtfully. After a moment she said, "I have the impression I've seen him, but the only baby that's ever been over here is Vivian's little girl. Who is he?" Janet had her hands full, with one hand holding Timothy on her hip and the other holding both her purse and the diaper bag, said tiredly, "It's a long story. Why don't we go into the living room where I can put all this stuff down and we can sit on the couch?" They went into the living room and sat down. Janet sat Timothy on her lap, facing Lisa, and held him. Timothy groaned inwardly as Janet told Lisa who he was. He blushed when she reacted to the news by saying, "Do you mean that's him?" "That's really Timothy." Janet assured her it was, and to Timothy's astonishment Lisa burst out laughing. "So you finally did it. It's about time someone put him in his place. Well, you're more powerful than the rest of us in the coven. You've got that regression spell down pat. I doubt that any of us could have done it." Lisa looked down at him and smiled. "I think you've picked the proper age for him too. It suits his personality." Timothy was stunned. He was surrounded by witches. It was inconceivable that he never suspected that Lisa or Janet, his wife for God's sake, he thought in exasperation, were witches. Lisa's attitude, however, was annoying considering all he'd done for her. Lisa said, "I can't tell you how many times I wanted to do something to him. He was always over here bringing me special gifts like negligées, and offering me oily compliments. Bah. If you weren't my friend, I'd have punched him in the nose." Janet said she understood her feelings and was sorry he had treated her that way. "But now things are going to be different. I'm going to take care of him," she promised her friend. Lisa said, "Honey, we know it's not your fault. You've done the best you can. Now, what are you going to call him?" "Call him?" Janet said in a confused tone. "His name's Timothy. I'll call him Timothy." Lisa shook her head no. "You can't do that. Timothy is an adult's name, or at least a boy's name. You'll have to call him by a baby name. People will ask questions otherwise. Janet looked thoughtful, then said, You're right, I'll have to invent a baby name for him. She sat silently for a moment and she began to grin. I think I have the perfect name for him, I'll call him Teddy. He'll be my little baby boy Teddy, she laughed. She looked down at him as he sat in her lap and said, Your name is Teddy, baby boy. Is Teddy going to be Mommy's good baby? Mommy's going to put you down on the carpet so you can play while Lisa and I talk. Here, she said. She took a small teddy bear out of the diaper bag and put it in his hand, saying, Here's a teddy for you to play with. Janet stood him up on the carpet next to the couch. He balanced precariously for a moment, the toy gripped tightly in one hand, then fell backward and landed on his bottom. He looked up and saw Janet and Lisa laughing at him. He glared at them with wounded dignity. Other than his pride, he was unhurt, the diaper and carpet had cushioned the shock. He rocked forward and used both hands and his legs to try and stand up, only to fall backwards again as he attempted to straighten up. Janet and Lisa burst out in peals of laughter at the display of his infantile uncoordination. His face burned with embarrassment and he decided he would rather sit on the other side of the room, as far away from them as possible. Unfortunately, the only way for him to get there was to crawl, but given the present circumstances, he didn't think he could embarrass himself any more than he just had. He moved slowly, getting up on his hands and knees to creep quietly away. He didn't wish to draw any more attention to himself with another failed attempt to stand. When he was midway there, he was struck by an odd sensation and stopped. He felt something, a yearning tension, in his lower abdomen. It was inside, immediately behind and above his testicles, in a place occultists call the Muladhara or root chakra. The pressure was growing and becoming an unpleasant ache when it was replaced by a different feeling. He felt a muscular ripple deep inside himself and the pressure vanished completely. It gradually became a faint sensation of pleasure, growing in intensity, becoming a quivering throb that rolled through his pelvis and sent tingling thrills coursing up and down his spine. It radiated from the perineum, beneath and behind his pubic region to his belly button and he felt a hot rushing sensation filling his groin. A warm languid feeling of relaxation and release enveloped him and he floated momentarily in the bliss that remained as it subsided. The experience dazed him and he smiled vacantly as he crouched, spellbound, on his hands and knees. His lucidity returned as he started to recover and he wondered what had happened to him. He resumed his creeping, slowly moving away from the couch. As he moved, he began to realize that something was wrong. His pubic area still felt warm. His diaper sagged lower now, almost 2/3 of the way to his knees. It felt heavier than it had a few minutes ago. He paused again as the stink of a dirty diaper assaulted his nostrils. He froze in panic. He knew that the diaper's reek would reach Janet and Lisa in moments. He was sickened and repelled by what he had just done. A moment's physical pleasure was about to become an afternoon of anguish and misery. They would laugh and giggle at his childishness. Janet would change his diaper in front of Lisa, cooing and babbling baby talk to him while she cleaned his dirty bottom. Lisa would sit there on the couch, smiling and laughing while he lay helpless and naked to her ridicule. The rest of the afternoon would be spent teasing and tormenting him with jibes about his immaturity. This body, his body, had betrayed him again. Janet was talking animatedly with Lisa when the stench reached them. The conversation stopped and both of their heads turned toward him, their eyes confirming what their noses told them. A big grin spread across Lisa's face as she said, I think Teddy just pooped in his didy.